Paolo, Mathias, welcome to the Bitcoin Infinity Show. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, good to have you here, guys. We're going to talk a bit about Keet and Holepunch and a little bit about Tether today, aren't we?
Sounds like that's the plan, yeah. So thank you again both for joining us. And just to start things off, would you both mind giving a quick introduction on yourselves, just so our listeners have the background on you both?
Sure. I'm Paolo Ardoino. I'm the CEO at Tether. I started my career as a developer over the last few years. I pivoted towards more strategy and execution for Tether and Bitfinex, and co-founded with Mathias Holepunch, that is building very, very crazy and awesome technology that is going to be disrupting the way people communicate.
Fantastic. And Mathias, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've been, so I come from a peer-to-peer background. I've been working with peer-to-peer technology the last, I always say 5, but it's probably more like 10 years because we all get older. I did a lot of work on BitTorrent, and I did a lot of work on JavaScript, and came a little bit later to Bitcoin, but saw a lot of potential on how we can use Bitcoin with peer-to-peer technology, and like how we can use peer-to-peer technology to kind of bring the same mission that Bitcoin has, but to all kinds of data, of setting all data free and making everything private per default and self-sovereignty, that kind of thing. I'm very into that. And I've been lucky to work like Paolo said, with Paolo for many years now, and get a lot of valuable feedback and idea sharing out of that. And we're on a mission to build some really cool things in addition to all the things we've already been building. So it's super exciting and glad to be here.
Oh, fantastic. Mathias, that was a perfect segue into basically an introduction to, can you tell us about Holepunch? What is Holepunch and what are you doing?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, we co-founded the company a couple of years ago now. We've been building up a team of really talented peer-to-peer engineers. We're always hiring also. So if anybody listening and want to join our mission, please apply. We have some really smart people working with us. But we teamed up to basically, so like I said in my introduction, I've been working on peer-to-peer technology for many years now, and kind of like thinking ahead how we can stop using all the technology. When I started, it was only used for basically piracy. I'm from the Nordics, and I think Knut is from the Nordics also, so he knows all about, the Nordics is all about piracy. It wasn't back in the day. A lot of very interesting technologies came out of it. But basically, how can we use those ideas that were proven by piracy back then to be really unstoppable, because a lot of people wanted to stop it, but apply that same kind of mindset to the general data, like so we can build actual applications that has that kind of quality that can withstand the wrath of God, that can work without any centralization. Actually, that's like nobody can shut down, not even the authorities if they wanted to, basically unkillable, and make that general enough that it can basically run any kind of application. Solve a lot of really hard problems. So, it works on your own computers, your home networks, mobile phones, and tie that up. I'm a developer by heart, into like a software stack that people can just build on. So not everybody has to go in and tackle all these problems individually, but just give them some software to solve all this so they can, as much as possible, just worry about making really cool applications that we use, the kind of thing. And yeah, like I said, we've been working really intensely on this for a long time, and Holepunch, we made this our core mission to scale this up and deliver a software stack on that. And it's been really exciting, and it's been really fun, and it's been very, very challenging. But if it's not challenging, then why do it? And especially with the backing of Tether, so Paolo, and also just the expertise from there, we have like a good hand belt to kind of like deliver this to the world. And the first thing we did was like think about what's a good first application that we can build that can kind of showcase this, but also something we really want to use ourselves and like see scale and also have on the world. And obviously that was a communications app, Keet, which was our first project, and we're still in beta, and we're still lots of work to do, and we're still iterating that really heavily. But like to kind of show that you can build these kind of apps without any kind of central points. And we released that also, like the first thing we released when we launched the company. And like I said, we're still building and still iterating it. It's a lot of fun. And then take the software stack from that, which we call the Pear Runtime, and then split that out so anybody else can build similar apps on top with that same technology stack. And And we launched that earlier this year also, and it's been really exciting so far. And it's I love going to work every day and solve, even though like you can kind of see on my hair that it's not really good for like the head scratching, but it's really, really fun, and it's really challenging, and it's kind of interesting goal as a company, basically, to have that if we go out of business tomorrow, our technology continues to exist because we're not in the loop of anything. It's also sometimes really hard to explain that we don't have any shit coins involved or any kind of like limitations on the stack, because we're basically engineering it not to be part of it, because that's the only way you can actually engineer these things, that they can withstand anything. That's super exciting, and we encourage everybody to try to check it out.
We've both used Keet, and I've certainly enjoyed the experience. I think the basics of this, as I understand it, is that it's entirely on both communicators' end, or a group of communicators. It's all on their end, and the communication is entirely peer to peer, as you say. And so I guess the main thing here is that what is Keet really? Actually, I'll back up a little bit here. What is the basics of Keet as say a product? What is the easiest way that you would explain what it is?
Yeah, well, the thing is actually really simple. We're basically trying to just build a world-class communications app that work to a large degree like normal communication apps that like Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp, just with all the centralization tucked away, with all the cost of running it tucked away, and then adding all the features that also we can because we're peer-to-peer, like infinite file sharing. Why put limits on things when there's no limits, because it's just between people and stuff. But like to a large degree, just wrap that up, take all the technology. People don't care about technology, but they shouldn't. Like we're technologists, we loved it, but don't have that service off too much to the user. Just have the user use it as any other app, but then just have it be 100% private per default, 100% like no strings attached. It just works. If we get cut off from the internet tomorrow, it will still work. That kind of thing. But deliver that in a way, and this is always our ongoing mission, where users don't really need to worry about it. It just works, and it works the same way to a large degree as their other apps work, except obviously there's no phone numbers and things like that, because there's a lot of issues with that. It's all very cryptographically sound, and but trying always not to bubble it up. And I think that's so it's actually a really, really simple mission, but it's obviously really, really hard, and that requires a lot of smart people. But luckily, our users, in a good way, don't need to be very smart about that. So I think that's the goal.
Yeah, a quick one there. No strings attached starts with the letters Nostr. So is Keet and Nostr, do they go mix well together, or is there an integration there between the two? I see a lot of similarities here. What's the story there?
Yeah, I mean, I tried to explain the differences between Keet and Nostr. I think Nostr is a very interesting protocol, but also is very, very simple. And the way I like to describe it is that if you are familiar with the history of file sharing, starting from the first one, super centralized, and then eventually every single step, from even LimeWire, and then you have Nutella, and you have all of them, you get to a decentralized one, the most decentralized one, that is BitTorrent. So the history of the file sharing proved that every time we try to centralize something, it ends up badly, right? So if you have any special node in the system that does a little bit more than others and requires more resources than others to run, that will end up badly. You might end up in a small room with a lamp pointed to your face, and then everyone suddenly will stop running an indexer, right? That reminds me about Nostr structure. So of course I praised the efforts on the open source side and work and so on. That of course is great. The reality is that if you are building a peer-to-peer system, or if you are building a very resilient communication system, if you think about Nostr, you would imagine that if you have 10 million or 100 million users, the number of relays would be probably less than the square root of the number of users. So that surface, although 100 million users they are not attackable, right? But the surface of the relays is much more attackable. And look at what will happen, what is happening with also the CoinJoin platforms, right? So very, very similar. If something, the beauty of Keet versus Nostr is that in Keet, you have number of relays is actually equal to the number of users, because the users are their own relays. And they can relate, actually, they can act as relays for others to increase, to further the connectivity. But that is how we think a technology that has to be ready for the apocalypse and resilient to the wrath of God should work. If you have a log number of users or square root of number of users as relays, I don't think it's cool technology. It will work of course, will work better than centralized technologies like WhatsApp and so on, or Twitter, but eventually will not work when you will need it the most. Because the point is that we will not know what will happen when we will need this technology the most. Today, not for everyone, but the world is still almost at peace. Things might unfold maybe in the future and maybe sooner rather than later. But when things will unfold, you will need the best of the best technology, the one that is truly independent, the one that is truly peer-to-peer. It's not really peer-to-peer if you have specialized relays, because it's not peer-to-peer, but where you have super peers randomly, right?
Yeah, the difference here, I guess, between the relays and not having any other centralized infrastructure in the picture is certainly an interesting distinction. We're definitely getting into a bit of the weeds, I guess, of this Keet architecture. I hadn't heard anything about that you can kind of act as a next connector or something like that. So I mean, there's a couple of related things. I know there was an announcement about what the Pear Runtime is that right? Can you talk a little bit about that, or can any other sort of ways that this is growing in your whole platform, I guess?
Yeah, sure. So basically, when we talk about ideas internally, also from our software background, we never want to solve just like a single problem. We want to solve a small problem that then can solve it for everybody. So it's kind of like we were not set out in the world to build necessarily communication technology. We want to build technology that can just send data around efficiently, so you can build any kind of app on top. So like really, we're all about modularity and all about taking these things to the extreme, so we can kind of repurpose it into any kind of application, and other people can get value out of it. And that's been our mission from the get-go. So basically, like Paolo said, when we built Keet, we took a lot of these primitives we had. It's all open source on our GitHub that can do various things, like relay encrypted data in a way that's completely private, nobody can read it, and in a generalizable way, so it can run on any applications. We have databases that can work with this data on device, but still in a way where nobody else knows what's going on, fully private. And like we spent many years perfecting this, and it's like still ongoing. So like huge project, and we similar to like connectivity, it might seem really easy if you don't know what's going on, that connecting this computer to another computer in another place, but it's really hard because ISPs and your internet providers, etc., they don't really want you to do that. So there's a lot of firewalls involved that you have to work around to get around. Back in the BitTorrent days, when I was working with P2P, it was a lot easier. It's only getting harder, and we had to like invest a lot in making that to work. This is all really hard problems that took a long time to solve. But luckily, all of these are like generalizable problems where you just solve them once to a large degree, and then it's solved for everybody. If you put them in a modular framework where anybody can kind of like put the Legos together on top. And that's what we've been heavily invested in. And then as we were building Keet, we realized that basically Keet is just like 95% these Lego blocks that is applicable for anything. So why not take all this stuff, package it up for free, like we don't make any money on it, and an open source runtime that we're just giving away so other people can contribute to, but also like build their own apps, and the more peer-to-peer apps the world has, the better, from my point of view. and document it and make it really easy to install. And I think actually Paolo said something interesting, because as soon as you have like one point of centralization, you can always unravel it. And coming from the BitTorrent days, I remember how quickly things can unravel. Like, people went to jail for linking to things because authorities, when they crack down really hard. So if you have one weak spot, it will be taken advantage of at some point by somebody. And so like even things like distributing updates to your software can be really hard, because that often requires like a central point, like you go to a website and you download it. And so all apps built on our runtime, for example, is distributed through the runtime, which is a little bit mind-bending. So all apps are peer-to-peer data applications themselves, and the network doesn't care, which means that we can continue to distribute updates even, if everything gets shut down. You only need like a bootstrap for the first install when you get the app, but it's a little bit easier problem to solve. So we're thinking that in at every level, because it's really, really important to us to like basically learn from everything that happened in the past and then actually build things that are resilient. And we take this to a degree where I'm sure we could move 10 times faster if we just let go a little bit of that idea, because it is easier to just put all the data in one place or put all the updates in one place. But then it's like, then we're just building the same old thing that's going to die eventually anyway. So we're very, very uncompromising in that mission of like actually decentralizing everything from updates to data, and then also always solving in a way where everybody can take advantage of that. And then the final thing I'll say about that is that, so every time we update that runtime, those building blocks of that runtime, every time we fix a bug, every time we make it faster, every app becomes faster. That's also very exciting. It's kind of like, because you're building the whole infrastructure into this layer that runs on your phone, and it's all somewhat generalizable. Every time you fix something, it's just better for the entire ecosystem, and that's obviously really, really exciting. And like I said, actually no strings attached.
Yeah. So I think you were referring to the trial of the Pirate Bay people there in Sweden, right?
I was lucky enough to meet a couple of them in Denmark, and it's been very fun to hear about their journey. And
there was a great documentary made about it called TPB AFK, so the Pirate Bay Away from Keyboard, about that whole trial and how corrupt the system was even back then, and throwing people in jail for providing links. I mean, they didn't do any more wrong than Google did from a certain perspective. And I remember even before BitTorrents, there was a program called DC++ or Direct Connect++. Do you remember that?
I used it. It was one of my first introductions to decentralization. The one that yeah.
And I remember it as you just shared is sort of like a Google Drive for everyone or something. Like you just shared your parts of your file tree to everyone who wanted to peek into it, I guess.
I find it interesting what you said, because I think it's interesting to think that I think to a large degree the whole decentralization movement that was happening with BitTorrent back in the day got shut down because at some point authorities figured out that they could just block DNS requests to kind of like shut it down for normal people. And as soon as they did that, it was actually kind of effective. And to Paolo's point, one point of centralization, no matter how weak it is, and they're done. And they tried to kill the technology elsewhere, but that's actually what killed it. And then obviously alternatives came that people could pay for, and also shows that people actually want, to stay on the right side of things. I think normally now it's going way much in the wrong direction again, because now we're back at abusing that centralization again. So the cycle will repeat. But like any point of weakness will be attacked at any point.
So what are the drawbacks to decentralization? I think we and our audience certainly understand the benefit of decentralization, what you gain by decentralizing. But what do you naturally give up in terms of the user experience and the ease of use, the convenience factor?
I'm sure Paolo has stuff to say here, but I love talking about this stuff, so I'll go first.
Go ahead,
but
I will pile
I
on.
think it's a really, really interesting question, first of all, because it's one of those questions where, obviously I want to say there's no drawbacks, but like anything, it's a balance, right? Because it's not that there's drawbacks and advantages, there always is, but it's also just a different paradigm. First of all, with centralization, I think one of the biggest thing I notice also with developers is that we all come out of systems, education systems, that teach us how to think centralized, which makes us biased towards centralized solutions. And I remember my whole curriculum was about servers and clients and stuff like that. So it's actually really hard to think about decentralization as developers. And I think that's actually part of why a lot of people think it's complex, because it is complex, but also because we've been trained massively in the other direction, and it's really hard to go back. Because then decentralization can be as simple as what Knut said about DC Connect, DC++ was just, I'm just browsing other people's computers. That's amazing. That's a really, really simple experience. It's like something you can never do centralized. But then, like in today's world, people, the first thing I always get asked is like, how do I get a username? And I'm like, well, usernames have an inherent centralization, and there's trade-offs there, and we need to think that through and stuff. And most applications don't necessarily require username. I'm not saying that's a bad feature, but that's where you need to think more about the trade-offs, because like there's governance involved to some degree. But for the core experience, and I think that's what we've shown in Keet so far, and like I said, we're still lacking a lot. There is actually very few trade-offs you need to do once you understand the technological changes you need to do. Then, like, there's always these tons of upsides also. Like, it's much easier to do big data transfers. Money is less of concern, which actually changes the thinking, how you think about features. And there, again, there's something we've been trained in a lot as developers, because we think centralized. When we talk about features at Holepunch, like, hey, we should add podcast recording to Keet. Normally, somebody would say, well, that's going to cost a lot of money to host that data. And we just always we don't even have that discussion, because it doesn't matter, because it's just between the users. And then it's more about like the UX. But then, other simple, like I said, other simple discussions, like let's add a username index. That's where we're like, okay, let's think that through, because there's like various things to think about there, because like there's no central governance, and we don't want to introduce that, because again, at one point it's bad. So it's more like you really need to think differently, and it's really hard to wire your brain to think differently. But once you get past that point, I think it's super interesting, and I think actually developers care way more than normal people, because developers care a lot about how links look and links and structure and that, and normal people are just used to just clicking buttons and apps and kind of going with the flow on that. And that's also what we're seeing, I think, with a lot of Keet usage.
I think when it comes to definitely the hiring has proven a little bit more challenging. As Mathias was saying, when you are told that the cloud is your friend, that hosting on Google Cloud or AWS is the right thing to do, and of course it got cheaper and cheaper, so now everyone can host their websites. But the reality is that 70% of the entire internet knowledge is hosted by 3 data centers of 3 companies. So developers should think about that, should think about the fact that internet was born to be point-to-point and peer-to-peer. And, we are very, very, very far away from that initial concept. So over the years, especially with the boom in the year 2000 for the internet boom and bubble, then companies realized that holding people's data is the way to go. With social media and social network, that is even worse. And so you have these friendly advertisements that are telling you that, with a smiley face that, you should upload all your data on Apple Cloud or Google Cloud. And in general, cloud backups are great, right? You want to have some sort of redundancy in your life, but the reality is that you should be able to upload those in an encrypted way. And yet most of this data sits unencrypted, because the big tech companies have to decrypt it and use it for, to milk the information to pay for another month of their new data centers. So the issue is we have so much power in our hands through our phones. I mean, the phones that we have today are much more powerful than the phones or even the computers that we had 10 years ago or 5 years ago. And so we are at the stage where we can use this hardware not only for communicating, but also for in the future for AI processing and inference and so on. So we need to understand that the world cannot be connected to Google. I mean, if we cannot be a function of Google, we cannot be a function of AWS. And so I think that there is escalating pace of towards centralization. And it's like almost like a black hole, and eventually, they will attract all the lights. And if we are too close to it, no light will come out anymore. And that's why we want to really to double down on this technology, because it's not going to be easy, right? It's going to be very, very challenging. And most of the people don't care, as Mathias said before. Most of the people will think, oh, well, it's, why do you care? I mean, everything works with WhatsApp and Signal. But Signal announced that their 2023 costs for data centers and data center costs are around $50 million. And they, apart the mobile coin, that was not the best thing that they could do. It's not easy for them to monetize. And the problem is that if you're basically almost the only way to monetize it is to sell your customers' data. So if you don't want to sell your customer data, eventually your service will not be sustainable. So the only way to make it sustainable is actually going back to peer-to-peer, where you can leverage people infrastructure, people connectivity, people phones, people processing power, deliver very high quality communication system. And so while people don't care, people don't care until they care. And when they will care, it will be probably usually too late if nothing exists yet. So when people will care is because shit is hitting the fan, and you really want to have a solution that is not, that will survive if all the countries around you or around the country where you live are not going to be nice to your own country, right? So that's the beauty of peer-to-peer. The peer-to-peer system will keep working if your neighbor countries are not going to be nice towards you. That's independence, that's resiliency. Those are terms that we need to take very seriously, especially seeing where the world is going to.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all primed for to have a, what's the word, proclivity for centralization, centralized solutions from a very young age. I mean, this is the state. This is what it is. Like, state-funded schooling, state-funded or state-subsidized media. We are like brainwashed into trusting institutions all our lives. So I think that is somewhat connected to why people are so reluctant to be vigilant about this on the internet. I mean, I think the two go hand in hand, that we take the comfortable way, or most people take the comfortable route of not taking responsibility for their own stuff, not only on the internet, but outsourcing responsibility to the government is basically the another side of the same coin, right?
Also find, I think also in that note, I find it very interesting, especially being from a small country like Denmark that doesn't have a lot of homegrown infrastructure, and just seeing how much communication with some of the public entities is happening through centralized platforms like Facebook and things like that, where like, okay, so not even do we centralize it, we also centralize it in companies that we don't even have any control over in different countries where we probably have, let's face it, no rights at all. So it's kind of like hyper centralization, especially like from the weakest point of view. And I think that's super problematic. And I'm always thinking it's weird that we're not talking about that more. And like, especially like from, when you look at the things that they try to do in the EU, they're almost trying to just push more and more in that direction, which I find even more interesting. So yeah, definitely it's like it's a huge problem, and it's only getting bigger, and that's why.
So to what level can decentralization actually get there? What is the limit to decentralization? And I'll calibrate this with an example. The internet itself, you said it was built to essentially originally be decentralized, but we don't have 4 physical links, like individual physical links between each other. The fiber or whatever the wire is goes together into another group of wires, which eventually go into some backbone, which is operated by a company, and then that goes into the global internet. And so somewhere it centralizes into telecom companies and other services. It might be decentralized on one level, but there is sort of a layer of centralized services that make the internet work, that isn't necessarily the so-called cloud providers and that sort of thing. So is there a limitation to how far this can go?
I think in general, sure, there are the ISPs and there are physical infrastructure is in part centralized, but also you start having redundancy, right? So, for example, the backbones are redundant. There are multiple companies running cross connects across different areas of the world. Now you have Starlink if you want. So you start getting, and by the way, that is a great way to start decentralizing connectivity, because Starlink will not be the only one that will run satellites. So will be multiple companies that will allow you to connect through satellites. Plus you have normal cabling. So it will become a huge mesh network. It's already in part, but will become more and more huge mesh network. So of course, if someone will cut the wires around your house and will use a beamer to kill your wireless, it's going to be a problem. But in general, you will always find a way, even with a pigeon, to start sending bits out of your house. So I think the most important part is you have to be in control of your own data. And then, you need to send this data with the shortest path to the people that you want to talk to. Right now, I usually make this example because I think when we do this presentation, we try to make people think about how much waste also centralized systems have created. So imagine you live in Rome, you live in Rome and you have your family. Most of people live nearby their families. That is a classic thing among humans. So 90% of the people live nearby their families, maybe nearby like 10 kilometers, 50 kilometers nearby. But if you talk to your family, every single message, every single photo that you will send to your family, that message will travel, instead of going 50 kilometers in a nearby town where your mother lives or your father lives, it will travel every single message, every single bit of every single video call or every single bit of every photo will travel 5,000 miles to Frankfurt just to go back 50 kilometers from you. Imagine how much government spent in order to create these internet lines and to empower them to make it bigger, with more capacity, when the majority of the people are talking to people in the same area. So peer-to-peer make things allows with lower latency, allows to save on bandwidth, allows to save on cost of global infrastructure. So that's how actually we can create better mesh networks, more resilient mesh networks, just because data will always find the shortest path from one point to another.
And still all roads lead to Rome. So
yeah, I'm Italian, so I need to use Rome as an example.
yeah. That's all good.
I think the discussion here is really interesting also compared to Bitcoin, because I also think it's actually the scaling longer term. It's a lot thing about sovereignty, I think. Like how, Bitcoin kind of told us very direct terms that if you have a key pair, you have your money. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you have that key pair, you have a way to get that money. And the means of transportation is actually very uninteresting in that sense, because like you have it with you. The internet today, the centralized internet, is designed in a way where, what does it mean to go to Facebook? Well, it's really hard to explain because it's like some certificate that issued by somebody, and we don't really, there's some, cabal of companies that manages that, and there's some regulations around that, but we don't really actually understand it that well as normal people. Technically, we can understand it, but it's very, very centralized, and it's very, very opaque, and it's very, very built into the infrastructure in that way, in a bad way. And with peer-to-peer technology, we kind of like taking the same approach as Bitcoin here and saying, well, you're just a key pair and the other person is just a key pair, and there's a bunch of protocols around that, but the transportation is actually not that interesting. Right now, we use the internet to do it. We'll probably do that for a long time, but there's no reason why we can take the same technology we have right now and in 50 years run it on like laser beams or something else, because we're taking the sovereignty back. I think actually that's the main thing to think about in that discussion.
Great news, everyone. Bitcoin, the Inverse of Clown World, is out now.
It's the successor to Everything Divided by 21 Million, and it's based on the last 2 years of podcasts that we've done together. So if you like the show, you're going to love the book.
Find the book on bitcoininfinitystore.com or on Amazon.
That's right. We have our own store now, bitcoininfinitystore.com. You can find not just books, but merchandise based on everything divided by 21 million, the inverse of Clown World. That's bitcoininfinitystore.com.
So check out Bitcoin, the inverse of Clown World today and buy some other stuff while you're there too.
This show is brought to you by Bitbox, our favorite hardware wallet. It's Swiss engineered and has all the most important security features to keep your Bitcoin safe, while keeping a user experience that even your grandma can use. So visit bitbox.swiss/freedom to learn more, or use code FREEDOM at checkout for 5% off. And remember, it's the BitBox 02 Bitcoin Only edition. Make sure to get that Bitcoin Only firmware.
Bitbox, 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 Bitbox.
Well, you know, when Paolo, when you were talking about that people don't care, when you were saying that people don't care because WhatsApp just works, I was at the same time thinking that that's the parallel of people saying that I don't care because Visa just works, right? And so the parallel between Bitcoin and what you're doing at Holepunch, Keet, everything else here really seems to be tracking along the same line. And I guess there's the connection that. I won't say all, but a lot of the people involved are already in the Bitcoin ecosystem. But can you comment on, is there a little more of a connection there between Holepunch and Keet and Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin definitely is working and servicing, I think, in a good way, many people and communities. But the users of Bitcoin today are, unfortunately, and also that relates to Tether, still mostly, I think, in the Western world, in the richer countries, as a way to save wealth and store as a store of value more than a means of exchange for different reasons, right? With like network that will improve, of course, over time, and there will be different approaches. But still, the world is not yet using Bitcoin. But the world will use Bitcoin when it will hit the fan. So, but the beauty of Bitcoin is that an option is already there, is available. And when something bad will happen, people immediately, with a snap of a finger, will turn to Bitcoin and will have it and can use it. We don't have that in communications. What is our parallel with communications if we don't have Keet? Well, I don't know, because if suddenly centralized communications will be blocked, or privacy in communications will be blocked, and you cannot use WhatsApp, or WhatsApp has to start giving all the information to every single government, and the government will become more evil than what they are today, also Western governments. Then we wanted to build the exact parallel, as we said it, we just tried to describe it, that with Bitcoin, right, for communications. We need to have something that, Keet will take time to, since there are so many alternatives that are working as with you can make the parallel with Visa, right? Visa is working today, so people are still using a lot of Visa. But if something will happen, they will use Bitcoin from one day to another. So WhatsApp is working, and Zoom is working, and Google Meet is working. So people don't feel the urge, but there will be a trigger point when people will feel the urge at some point in their lives because something happened around them, and we need to make sure that Keet will be available to them, and will be an option, will be stable, will be well designed, so that when they will need it the most, that option will be available to them.
Yeah, fantastic. And well, so I think the follow-up I have, and just to get back to the earlier discussion a little bit with Nostr, the communication in terms of messaging, I absolutely see that, and directly in what Keet is, I already absolutely see that. Is there a goal to get somewhere towards more like social media, social networking, things like that, in certainly a decentralized way? But right now there isn't something like that, as I understand it, coming from Keet. So is that a goal? Is that on the roadmap?
Yeah, it is on the roadmap. It's something that so we had to start with the thing that we thought was more urgent, and also the thing that would have been a game changer. So again, sure, social media is very important, especially in difficult situation. You want to get news. You want to get unbiased news, right? So you want to use social networks to see what's happening in the world. But we think that the most sacrosanct thing that you need in your life is to be able to talk to your family and friends in any situation with the highest privacy possible. So that's the first thing that we tackled, and also was a way to battle test the technology. With Keet, you can do high quality video calls as well. So if we are able to tackle in the best way possible privacy and extreme scalability of the peer-to-peer communications, then on top of that foundation, we can build also social media and every single other application that we have in mind. But first, we wanted to tackle the hardest problem. I'm sure, Mathias, if you want to add on to that.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I also just want to say, as probably like one of the most prolific Keet users, I use Keet right now also as a very like a social media. We had big public rooms where we talk about Keet and talk about technology, and I get a lot of the value I would get otherwise on Twitter X from that, because it's like a public platform for me to get ideas out there, but also interact with users directly. And I think there's many ways to take a messaging app, and we're talking about this a lot. Obviously, it has to be simple, it has to be parent approved. And my parents can figure it out. But I think to a large degree, all really healthy social networks that are actually to some degree a communication app. And it's also just a really good way to get local news and to get this locality that peer-to-peer is good at. That doesn't mean that we might not also make other things, but I think it's a hard line to set the difference between a social network and a communications app when it's structured correctly, I think.
Yeah, and this another thing that came to mind just as you were talking about these parallels, as I understand it, the account system with Keet is essentially still just a key pair. Correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah,
but
very true.
you use backups with the same 1224 words, right? Is that fully interoperable as well as that could be your Bitcoin key, that could be your Nostr key, that could be
we use the same, can't remember the BIP, but there's a BIP for like during key generation, so we can use it also in the future for other things. And you have those words, you have your account, and that's we never store that, and that's like your sovereignty, and then lets you use it also. That lets you use it seamlessly on different devices also. It's one of those things that I love because I know what's going on when you use Keet on two devices. Insanely hard problem, but it's solved by the runtime, and it just works seamlessly. And I think that's the beauty of it. I think there's some UX stuff to figure out about onboarding that stuff a little bit easier for normal people. That's probably to a large degree the same for Bitcoin. Something I'm always like, the first step is always the hardest, I think. But yeah, it's very true. Hello.
The other parallel that I would do with Bitcoin is that with Bitcoin, with your 1224 words, you can access always your private wealth. In the same way, so the beauty of Bitcoin is that you can remember 1224 words, you cross borders, and you carry with you your wealth. You can do the same thing with your digital private life. You remember 1224 words, they could be the same, by the way. And whatever happens, you can spawn back your digital private life, fully encrypted from one of your other devices that you connected that is somewhere else in the world. So when you start seeing and understanding the unlock in terms of also human resilience that this creates is very, very insane, and can create a very powerful that can be used to create a very, very powerful applications. Again, not just communications, but you can build really any sort of interaction, even mapping. Imagine peer-to-peer mapping, where basically data is not stored in one single location. You can access, tiles of the maps that are more nearby you from local people that curate them in a better way. So the level of type of applications that you can build, all unlocked by the same technology that is being used by Bitcoin, is very, very incredible.
Yes, absolutely it is. And well, what do you think of the idea that all of this stuff is just interoperable now, based on essentially you have your private key and there you go. It doesn't matter the technology stack. Is that sort of an agnostic thing where you can take your data to any one of these systems. What you're building with Keet being one, Nostr being another, Bitcoin being a third. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that, data is yours, right? So you should do whatever you want with your data. That is, I think, an axiom that we should assume. And we shouldn't even discuss about this, right? We are discussing about it because people are trying to take away this axiom from us. But definitely, you are a key pair, and you're basically because you are unique. And uniqueness is expressed by the cryptography around those 24 words. And that also is a way to prove your identity. It's like, it's the best is a mathematical way to prove your identity. No one can steal that from you, of course, but no one will can track it, as no one can should not be able to impersonate you. So it's truly powerful.
Also think it's like worth remembering here also in this discussion that a lot of very high valuable data for yourself is actually not that big, but centralized platforms take it hostage anyway. Like if you take all my chat history, and I have pictures, but like a couple of the pictures would probably be bigger than all my chat history ever. But a lot of those messages have a lot of value for me, especially personally, and also being able to search through it and have infinite history is very valuable for me personally. But it's very scary for me if that's on some public platform where it gets leaked at some point, et cetera, et cetera. But we already have the devices, just normal consumer devices that we buy, that we all had, phones, computers, whatever, that have more than enough capacity to store multiple copies of this. Again, you might have some media that might push that a little bit over, but like, in terms of like per user data production, it's a manageable problem. And I think it's interesting how much providers force us to think in terms of like giving that data away, even though we could easily store it.
And this is even more important when we think about potential, AI applications, right? So imagine your best assistant, and the Paolo's assistant should go through all the emails of my emails, my kids' chats, my old social stuff, and be able to be my best assistant. But in order to do that, I have two options. Either I imagine that OpenAI would come with an assistant. They would upload all the information on their servers, crunch that information, and then, use it to service me, but also service their own needs. And that can become very, very scary. Also because they were hacked, by the way. It's public, right? So you don't want your most intimate thoughts that your best personal assistant could know to be on somewhere else rather than your devices. And so people never uploaded, at least most of the people would never upload medical information on Facebook, right? But they are uploading it on ChatGPT to get a second opinion. So things can get even scarier than what we described today, because, we discussed about social media. That is basically, the fun part where we upload photos, when we are eating something cool. But things can become scarier when it comes to privacy and data control with AI. So I want to see a future where I have a local AI that is integrating Keet, can read all Keet messages that I have from my local phone or my local device, and can become the best Paolo's assistant possible without renouncing to my privacy, and also still governed by the same 24 words. So, the fine tuning that is applied on that LLM should stay local to my own device, and I should be in control of that. And still, the current power of the devices that we have makes it possible. We should not fall for the same lie. Of course, big data centers with hundreds of or thousands of GPUs are important for training a huge LLM, but that is a generic LLM. You can take that one and then fine tune with your own data and run it by yourself. And for most of it, unless you want to do crazy things, that is more than enough and can run on modern GPUs or local GPUs or your phones. So we should not fall in the trap of that brought us to think that the only way to build system was through client server. We should start thinking that we can build local experiences without having an API all the time connected to someone else's data center.
This show is brought to you by the Bitcoin Advisor, your premier destination for professional Bitcoin management.
Yeah, so if you want help with your Bitcoin inheritance planning or anything like that, you can call us or send us a DM because we're Bitcoin advisors.
Exactly. They've been serving Bitcoin clients since 2016, and they offer a top-notch Bitcoin concierge service, including collaborative custody and estate planning. We're on the Bitcoin Advisor team ourselves because we believe 100% in what they're doing, and we're happy to tell you more about the Bitcoin Advisor on a call.
So check out thebitcoinadvisor.com or just simply shoot us a DM for some Bitcoin advice. Hey, dear listener, don't forget to like, subscribe, and brush your teeth.
And if you're enjoying the show, the best way you can help us out is spreading the word on your favorite social media platform. Ours is Nostr. The show is going Nostr first, posting the episodes on Nostr 1 day early. And if you'd like to support the show, the easiest way to do that is to send us a zap on Nostr, use a value for value podcasting app to send us a boost, or pick something up from the Bitcoin Infinity store. We appreciate the support.
Yeah, go click like, go click subscribe, and go brush your teeth now. Super interesting. I mean, you just briefly mentioned Tether before, and I think we need to get into this since we're running a little short on time here, because we're curious to know how Tether works and why it's a tool on the path to hyper-Bitcoinization. What is it, and how much of a maxi are you, Paolo? And like, what made this thing happen? Can you give us the story here about Tether?
So Tether started in 2014. So I personally I consider myself a maxi, but running Tether, you could say that I'm a shitcoiner. I don't mind, right? So I like what I do, and I think I'm a net positive, so it's okay. So Tether was born in 2014 with the very simple idea. We had different crypto exchanges, not us, but in general, there were few crypto exchanges in 2014. It was Bitfinex, Coinbase, Kraken, Bitstamp, OKCoin. There was BTC China, and just a few others, right? Around 10 that were meaningful. The problem back then was to do trading arbitrage. You sell Bitcoin on the exchange where the price is higher. You take the dollars from that sale. You move the dollars on the exchange where the price is lower, and rinse and repeat. That's called arbitrage. It's a property of every single efficient financial system. And that also helps to keep the price of Bitcoin in line across different exchanges. But that was very, very hard in 2014. If you remember, in 2013 was the first year that Bitcoin price broke the $1,000. But on some exchanges, the price was 1.2, on others was 900. And in order to arbitrage that price difference, you have to move dollars from one exchange to another and Bitcoin from one exchange to another. You can move Bitcoin from one exchange to another in 10 minutes, but dollars would take days, right? International wires. And so, of course, the opportunity to arbitrage was fully gone by the time the wire was hitting the receiving exchange. And so the reason why we created Tether was USDT was simply to put the dollar on a blockchain so that we could have the same user experience that we had with Bitcoin, and to make arbitrage very, very simple. For the first 2 years, almost no exchange apart Bitfinex understood USDT. Then Poloniex in 2016 started to add the USDT across against every single trading pair. There was the start of the ICO boom. 2017 was the peak of the ICO boom, and USDT reached 1 billion in market cap. Fast forward in 2020, we had around $10 billion in market cap. And then the bull run started, but also another important thing started. That was the pandemic. So the pandemic had a huge effect on many economies around the world, in all the economies around the world, but especially in emerging markets, developing countries. Basically, pandemic also killed entire economies. And so as a Bitcoiner, you would think, oh, well, all these people that are in countries like Argentina and Venezuela and Turkey and so on, they should use Bitcoin. And they should only use Bitcoin because everything else is shit, right? So that is pretty much, the approach that we have as Bitcoiners that I kind of believe in. But the problem is that not everyone is ready. So not everyone has our time to understand Bitcoin. Not everyone has yet the full skill set to understand Bitcoin at this stage, at this moment in time. We as Bitcoiners didn't build the best user experience in the world, right? So one of the best wallets for Bitcoin is still Electrum that, is not necessarily nice and well done and to simple to be used for, a 70-year-old lady, right? So we need to do a better job as Bitcoiners to build better user experiences if we want Bitcoin to be more used around the world. At the same time, 99% of the population knows, especially the ones that are living in high inflation areas, knows that there is the dollar that is usually much better currency than what they hold in their hands. So the US dollar is definitely not perfect. It's not the perfect fiat currency. So, but it's like the tale of the two friends running away from the lion, right? So you have, one friend tells to the other, "Oh, the lion is gonna kill us. We have to run really, really fast." And the one of the two friends says to the other, "Well, I just have to run faster than you." Right. So the US dollar is the friend that is running faster, in a sense that is the one that is likely better than the others. And so in being better than the others is creating a sort of safety feeling among 5 billion people in the world that live in high inflation countries. And so for those people that they don't have yet the time, they didn't have the luck also maybe to understand Bitcoin, they are in fact using USDT. So they had, if you live in Argentina peso lost 98% against the US dollar in the last 5 years. The Turkish lira lost 80% against the US dollar in the last 5 years. So of course, Bitcoin would be better than the US dollar. But even already, if you hold the dollar, you are the king of the hill there, right? So because you are able to preserve your wealth much, much better than almost anyone else in the region. So I think the way I see it is that USDT is offering a temporary solution and is providing a very good service to people that don't have alternatives and good alternatives. And they are very, very familiar with the US dollar already. So eventually the hyper Bitcoinization, I think it will happen. There is no way it won't happen. It's hard to pinpoint on the time when that will happen, but it's all about the turning point, what the economy will look like in the next 10, 20 years, and what trigger point there will be for fiat currencies to blow up and become irrelevant. But the way I see it is that it's likely that the US dollar will stay around for a while, and people might still want to use the US dollar as a checking account, but they start to use the Bitcoin as their savings account. In the checking account, you want to, even today, you are happy to not make interest on the checking account, and it's something that you can use for payments. It's something that you are okay to detach from your checking account, because it's the money that you are ready to spend. The savings account is the thing that we should fight for. Is the thing that matters the most, and it's the thing that is protecting people's wealth. And so, in the long term and in the medium term, we should push for this savings account to be Bitcoin. Also with Tether, we are heavily investing in companies, in Bitcoin companies. We supported Blockstream. We supported so many in the space we are supporting RGB. That is a protocol that is building assets on top of like network style channels. And we buy Bitcoin ourselves. We do a lot of Bitcoin mining. We develop, I think, the best and most sophisticated Bitcoin mining software, by the way, based on Holepunch technology, is like IoT for Bitcoiners and Bitcoin mining. It's very, very cool. And, I think that definitely we are relying on the dollar and definitely in a way you could see that you could say that USDT is helping the dollar expansion. But the same way, I don't think dollar and Bitcoin are necessarily opposed one to the other. I think that Bitcoin has its own path, and no matter what happens, there is no way to slow it down. I think, it's going to be inevitable. The success is going to be inevitable. That will become global internet money and global world money. No country will trust to each other with each other currencies for a longer time. And so the only viable solution is a currency that is governed by math. That is the only objective way or objective thing that we have in the universe. Yeah, that's my train of thoughts on Tether and Bitcoin.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that explanation. It explains a lot of things. And to me, it sounds a bit like you're a lubrication company, like selling lubrication for the transition between the rape of the dollar to the love fest of the hyper Bitcoinized world, to make the transition a little smoother.
We are onboarding. So at Tether, we have also this educational arm, and believe it or not, the majority of the education we do is actually on Bitcoin, right? So we are supporting the Plan B network led by the great Giacomo Zucco. So we try our best to go around, and the unfortunate thing is that USDT, we didn't have a marketing team up to end 2022 with Tether. So basically, I wish I could say that the success of Tether is because we were super intelligent and great. But actually, the success of Tether, unfortunately, is a symptom of the success of national economies. And it's kind of sad if you think about it, right? So the success of your main product, USDT, is directly proportional to the fuck up of many central banks. And but it is what it is, right? So we need to what we do at Tether is creating all these educational contents to try to explain that, sure, we are providing a tool for today, but for tomorrow, you probably need to understand that you have other options. You need to understand Bitcoin, because as we said for Keet, right? So the moment when you will need the most Bitcoin, it has to be available. You need to understand it, so that is a true option for you. So that's the way we see Bitcoin education.
No, and I guess like something like Tether would have emerged either way, and it's very comforting to know that it's run by Bitcoiners and not by a central bank itself or something. So yeah, and the Plan B network. I mean, I was a guest lecturer there in Lugano, and it was fantastic. I love what you're doing there with the educational hub. And we even got Giacomo to write the foreword to our new book here that you can see here behind Luke.
The Inverse of Clown World. Always say the title, Knut. Always say the title.
Bitcoin, the Inverse of Clown World. It's if you're good at maths and emojis, you might be able to figure out the title from the cover, but it's 1 divided by Clown World anyway, which is on the opposite side of the everything divided by 21 million equation, I guess. So anyway, looking forward to seeing you in Lugano and giving you both a copy of the book, of course.
Oh, with pleasure, with great pleasure, with a nice education. How you call it, like
Absolutely, yeah. You'll get signed copies. Absolutely, yep, 100%. And we have to wind things down, but I'll just say as well, yeah, absolutely looking forward to Lugano Plan B Forum. Always a highlight of the year. It was my first time last year. I absolutely loved it. So can't wait to attend this year. Yeah. Anything you want to say about that, by the way? Just since we're here, we've got a few minutes left.
So it's the 25th and 26th of October 2024. Well, this year, it's a Bitcoin event that is not made to make money. So the problem with events is that you have to find sponsors, and usually, sponsor might not be well aligned with the message you want to give, right? So I think Tether is lucky enough to not have to make money on the event. I want to have good guests. I want to have great speakers. I want to have the messaging that is not only about Bitcoin, it's about freedom of speech as well. We had the family of Assange for the last few years. I think that they will come also this year. By the way, we are going to also launch an event. We're going to be probably killed by our marketing team. I'm not sure if they announce it, but we are going to have another Plan B event also in El Salvador next year. So we're trying to create this network of cities and countries that have things in common and invite people that want to share knowledge around. And and of course we are very proud of the good food that we serve in Lugano. So that is another thing that not all the events can say the same thing.
No, it's fantastic, and we happened to bump into the Assange family at the cocktail bar in a fancy hotel, and had a very interesting conversation with them there. So if you're listening, anyone from the Assange family is welcome on the show anytime. So yeah, no, looking forward to that event for sure. We had a great time, and I think we're even playing this year, aren't we, Luke?
You're playing?
Yeah, the yes. I understand it. The Satoshi Nakamoto is in the event there, and yeah, we played back in Prague. It was my first time, but Knut is a regular at the Rakamotos.
What you're playing? Which songs?
Oh, anything and everything. What did we do in Prague? We did some
Paranoid and yeah.
Can I commission a song?
Yeah, sure. Sure. What song would you like to hear?
So I have two that I would suggest. One is Nothing Else Matters.
All right.
So I think that that also is very inspiring, right?
It's about Bitcoin for sure.
Nothing else matters. It's perfectly in line with Bitcoin. And the other one is Sad But True. I'm a big Metallica fan. So
that would be fun. That would be fun. Yeah. We'll squeeze in some Metallica there, won't we, Luke?
We will 100% have those songs ready to go. I guarantee you that.
We're also gonna have there's also a big peer-to-peer track at the conference. So not so much music, but peer-to-peer.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Hey, we have to wind things down here because we're almost out of time. So I'll just hand this back to you both. Is there anything else you like to mention about say your plans in the upcoming couple of years in Keet, Holepunch, anything like that?
Only that we're, like I said, we're iterating really hard right now. It's a really fun time to both join the company because we're small and efficient, and we get to work with Tether, which has a lot of benefits, and we're scaling really fast. So definitely check that out. And it's also a really fun time to join Keet in our public rooms. There's a lot of very personal, in a good way, intense chats where you get to be part of the loop. So I love to be part of those early communities, and I suggest everybody to check that out and go to your website and try it out.
Well, we will certainly do that. So, yes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So go check out Keet and Holepunch and the Plan B forum in Lugano. And and also go to the Bitcoin Infinity store and check out that and what you can find there.
You could visit Tether.io. That is the website where we are trying to explain what we have in our minds between finance, Bitcoin mining, energy production, AI, communications, brain chips and stuff, right? So I think it's more exciting.
Just those things? That's all?
Yeah, I mean, we are probably, I don't know, we can piss off more than this.
No, it's just perfect. It's just perfect. And is on that note, is there anywhere else specific you'd like to direct our listeners?
Just follow the social channels and give us feedback on Keet all the time, because it's, these technologies, needs everyone's help to be nailed down.
We love technical feedback. We love UX feedback. We love all the feedback. We're trying to make something that works for the masses. So anything is good.
Fantastic. So that's all at Keet.io. Is that correct?
Yeah.
For Keet?
Yeah. Keet.io and Pairs.com for our runtime. That's the only links. And then it's no links after that. It's all peer-to-peer.
Wonderful. And you're also still on the legacy social media platforms, right? Twitter yes. At minimum?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll make sure to include links to your handles so people can find you there if they would like.
Appreciated.
So Paolo, Mathias, thank you very much for joining us. This has been the Bitcoin Infinity Show.